Hello. Can you tell us your name, your pronouns, and a little introduction about yourself?
Sure. My name is Lazara Paz-Gonzalez. She, her, ella pronouns. I am the Senior Director of Youth Services at Hedrick Martin Institute, a youth serving LGBTQIA community based organization based in New York City.
Thank you. And can
Yeah.
you tell us about some of your interests and feel free to describe the work or projects that you are involved in?
Yes, absolutely. Let's see. So, my interest, that's a really, really broad question. For me, I think that first and foremost, I have professionally and personally been focusing on health access, and even health rights for people of color, particularly youth, has been my intended population for a really long time. But for people of color throughout my entire career, it has stemmed from personal experiences with broken healthcare systems and misinformation and misdiagnoses and just gaps in the way that I was receiving services. And as I aged and throughout my own personal journey, specifically as identifying as a queer person, I saw how much more difficult that became, right? Like that intersectionality that makes all the parts of me whole, really, really were getting missed at many of the turns. And so it really has become my own journey to be able to support people in what it is that they need. So whether that be through rights campaigns or through literally development of programs that serves people of color and making sure that they have what they need to stay as healthy as possible. A nonprofit community based agency. We're working with folks between the ages of 13 to 24, and part of our programming has also expanded to the age of 29, which is really, really great. That particular programming is focusing on housing access for folk, specifically within the Kiki and ballroom scene, and really expanding even the concept of family and structures of parents, and what being able to have a supportive community tacked along with housing, and being able to monetize that towards long term shelter. I think is such a beautiful concept, and we're working through that with for a little bit of older folk. For myself, beyond 13 to 24-year olds here in house, we really have a foundation of mental health being the and emotional support being the foundation, literally the soil that is going to keep it all together and allow for all the other budding flowers. And that includes youth development. So looking at GED and or academic support, college prep and higher learning prep, and also job readiness. We have a really budding and beautiful health and wellness team that focuses on sexual health and also gender affirming pieces that allow people to be recognized as whole, right? Having agencies over their bodies, but also their identities. We have a beautiful housing team that I started to mention some of the program that is offered here through that, but not exclusively only that. We also have outreach for folk. We go out, we seek to support any young person who may be unhoused and or unsheltered, and either give them some outreach materials, of course, nothing that's super long term, but pieces that may support them sustaining overnight, wherever they may be staying, and then moving forth services. And then lastly, we offer in-house hot dinner every night, 5 p.m., and pantry and laundry support. So it's really a robust set of services. And to me, it feels like I genuinely work in a space that is constantly looking to affirm young people's experiences, no matter what their threshold and what has been thrown at them, to build a more concrete, solid space of, hey, listen, we're acknowledging who you are. We hope that we can be a little bit of a braver space for you, that you can work through your journey in whatever capacity that looks like, and then we send you out into the universe.
Thank you so much for that very beautifully thorough introduction. There are so many remarks that you mentioned that we'd like to take a deeper dive into, especially since HMI addresses very diverse sets of needs for people. So, what kind of leadership goes into organizing a community that is as impactful as HMI?
Ooh, the type of leadership. It's leadership that is flexible. It's leadership that really honors people where they may be at, understanding that some folk may be super high functioning, right? But also understanding that people, no matter what their abilities or otherwise may be, are people, right? And that so many of us show up in so many different ways. And so, from an organizational standpoint, it is around acknowledging the pieces of just humans who are often doing the work, also come from a place of possible direct identification with the populations that we're serving. So some of our trauma can be unhealed. And so we are all healing in the journey to being able to support people to be the best they can be and offer the best programming that they have. So as a leader, we really have to be like aware of that. To understand that oftentimes what we think people need may not always be what they need. And so we have to really be able to listen and also drop our egos many times, around all these great things that we're trying to put together, that are really great on paper and not always the most practical approach. Right? Another thing that we have to consider is do not shy away from who is willing to help us get through our journey, right? I think that we have to be open and not so prescriptive on the partners we have, the allies we include, the funding sources we're bringing in, while still maintaining a sense of trueness to our mission, to our vision, but our identities as well.
Mm.
Right. So it takes a lot. It's not an easy role. It also really requires a strong team, right? People who may not look like you, people who may not think like you, but people who are truly invested in the same purpose and have had a variety of walks of life to be able to create something as unicorn as our spaces.
Takes a lot of effort to meet people wherever they are, for sure.
Yeah, certainly, certainly.
And can you describe the HMI delivery model for mental health services that work to reduce depression and anxiety amongst youth in the LGBTQ plus community?
Absolutely, absolutely. So as I said before, it's literally at the foundation of what we offer. And so our outreach almost always starts with how you doing? What's going on? Right? Like we don't need us to tell you, we don't need you to tell us, oh, I'm seeing a therapist or not. Like we understand the minority stress of plainly identifying as a queer identified person, right? Add to that then the intersectionalities of racial or ethnic identities, add to that age, right? Add to that all the other pieces that are kind of just functioning as ourself. And we really go out, we start with how are you doing? What are the supports that you have as a young queer person? And beyond that, the moment that someone says, hey, I am Lazara, I might be interested in going into your space, we invite them. They do, from coming in the door, they're greeted by a person right at our entry. Once they come in, they do a short intake. That intake then directly connects them to a counselor. Every young person or any member, potential member that comes in through our door is greeted by our counselor. And the counselor does a more in-depth assessment. Within that intake conversation, we look at what needs people may have, even if it isn't a direct mental health and or emotional need. We offer that component of emotional support even in our space. As a social network, we offer it by the programs that we deliver to our members. Most of them are co-led by licensed clinical staff. We are coupling every internship with a counselor. We are giving every opportunity with a counselor. So even if it's non-direct, or I should say indirect ways that people are receiving the mental health and or emotional support, it's really the integrated lace, right, into every piece of our fabric.
Mhm. And related to this, what does the job and career readiness program include for the young people who are looking to start their career after establishing their mental and physical well-being?
Yeah, so pretty much our economic mobility model is laced throughout everything. So almost every group, every department and our team that we have has an internship opportunity. Within these internships, we honor that young people need monetary support in order to survive. And so they are monetized per hour in their participation of the internship. Once they're doing that, what we're adding now is also every internship has to go through at least 1 hour of meeting with a financial planning staff. And I don't mean like investment, I mean like literally understanding what a checking account is and how to use your debit card and what's the wisest way to be resourceful with your money,
Yeah.
right? Um, some skills that we may not have picked up otherwise. And so they have that opportunity here. Internship participation is not limited to just one. There are various ways in which our members can participate. And one of the programs then is also being ushered into our job readiness program. That particular program, so beyond having participation in other internships and being able to be part of that economic mobility, job readiness then supports them with different career specific opportunities. So right now we're having a queer coders group that's happening. So people who may be interested in tech. We have a Mac internship, so people who may be interested in makeup and aesthetics. We have an internship that is going to be specific for trans and or GNC identified youth, to be able to develop life skills that support them in being able to not only having a proper physical presentation for job interviews and skills and language, but also a resume that's ready to be used. And what does it look like even to have a headshot that's appropriate and ready? What are your LinkedIn sites look like? So the tools and the pieces that aren't supplied to our members on a traditional basis is available here. And not only are they learning, but they're also gaining money while they're doing
That's very comprehensive support that you all provide.
it. We're excited to be able to offer that.
For sure. And what does the recreational program and activities look like for you since it is very important to cultivate the things that excite them and bring them some joy?
Yeah. So recreational means so many things, right? So I'll speak to two particular pieces that we have. One is our really budding and beautiful art program, which can be considered a recreation. Folk are able to come in and we have, in fact, I have some of the art hanging in my office, which is really cool. But folk have different mediums in which they're doing their art. So we have painting, we have drawing, we have, in fact, we're going to have an art show towards the end of the summer, which is really exciting, that will be showcased in a space, particularly in our gallery here in New York, where it will be open to the public to be able to see some of the art that the youth or our members have created. So it's just an opportunity to be expressive and to dive into a craft that maybe they didn't think that they had. And so that's one outlet. The other is a cultural piece, which we've had for the past, I'd say 25, almost 30 years of its existence at HMI, not existence in the community. And it's our Kiki and Ballroom opportunity and scene that we offer here. And so within the Black and Brown community, as many may know, there is the existence of the ballroom community, which literally is the recreation of houses and structures of homes in the ways that the community has developed, identified, and cultivated. So when there was lack of existing biological support, the community has stepped in to help each other in the form of a house and in the form of um, guardianship and parenting structures. And within that, the outlet for expressing our uniqueness, our style, our art, and movement really has been through balls. And so here at HMI, we have Kiki opportunities where our members can come Monday and Wednesday and practice kiki skills and really just um, do whatever they need to in order to really build on the craft. And then once a month, we offer Vogue Femme Fridays, and we have a mini ball that we offer on site. And so, in fact, tomorrow we'll be having a mini ball. And folk from the various Kiki houses, so the youth specific houses, are able to come and enjoy and be part of the ball. It happens for just an hour and a half. We allow community to be present. We have a panel or a group of judges, some awards are given, and then that's it. So those are our two biggest ways in which we're offering like a recreational opportunity that really is acknowledging what the culture wants and how they want to be recreational and or express themselves.
That is very exciting.
Thank you.
And what has been the response of the young people in these programs? And is there a testimony that has really spoken to you personally?
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's funny because we've been recently looking at our data. It's the beginning of the fiscal year, and so we're all excited and planning for the work plans and all the work that we've been doing. And so, for me, I just finished seeing some of 2022 into 23, so that's the most recent data that we have. And that of the close to 280 respondents that we had in our survey, 94.7. I mean, like I'm really proud of that number. Have said that they're either they feel satisfied or very satisfied with the services that they receive here, right? Of that, what they highlighted to be the one thing that they love is that they have people who look and identify like them to greet them, right? That it's a welcoming space and that they're able to access non-traditional resources that would have been a barrier in the past, right? The other piece I want to highlight is that everything that we offer our community is free. No HMI member has to pay anything in order to, one, be a member, right? Which just allows you access to our community. But two, any of the resources that we have are free to our members. And so that's a big thing because what we know about structural barriers is that oftentimes part of there not being the access is also the cost to the access. So being able to give it free is like really great, and we know that it's being honored by our community. And beyond that, I think the most recent testimony, and I feel that people have been running with the story, but I am humbled that there was a young person, 15-year-old young person, who is a refugee asylum seeker from Northern Africa, who found their way to New York City after having experienced abuse. They were or had been train surfing for a little bit because they're unhoused and unsheltered, found their way to HMI and was able to be connected with resources that they wouldn't have been able to find on their own. And so they met with our team, about 5 or 6 of our staff wrapped around them. We were able to connect them with other resources in New York City, potentially have short-term housing to support them in their immediate need, all while this young person did not speak English. And so I feel that services like that are critical. And sure, this is one story that we're highlighting, but many stories like that are happening. We have to remember that we are one of the biggest, most diverse diasporas probably of the world, where there are potential for opportunity here in New York, but we have to find ways to navigate it. And that, like any other place, resources can be limited. And so the opportunity for us to be able to immediately support that youth was critical and really one of the highlights that we have. And that youth has managed to find a way to come back to us, right? So that it wasn't just a one-off, that they felt comfortable enough in spite of the limitations and or potential language barriers that they still feel comfortable to come back. And I feel that speaks to the staff, but also the space, right? Like, and I always say this, we may not always be a safe space because the reality is that safety means so many things and can be a different thing for everyone, but we hope that it is a safer space and or a braver space for folk to be able to come to.
Thank you for highlighting what cultural competency looks like and what access with zero gates can accomplish, especially with this story. So we appreciate giving those details and that insight. And now, in terms of the gradual shift in the public perception of the LGBTQ plus community, how has that impacted youth that you've gotten to work with? And do they ever have a greater sense of freedom? And what long-term challenges are they still working to overcome?
Geez, do they have a greater sense of freedom in our space? Yes, because really we're allowing folks to show up the way they are, right? Again, acknowledging that people have different abilities, people have different ways that they show up even in their identities, and that sometimes in the safest of spaces, that's when we act out the most, right? So there are ways that we work around people's and the way that they show up. That doesn't mean that we don't have boundaries. That doesn't mean that we don't have limitations. That actually, and we even have consequences sometimes. However, we try to do it in the most person-centered way, so that people can show up as their whole selves, and celebrate them. Right. So yes, most often people come here and it's like, whoa, I get to like let go of my mask and really show up as I am. And it's really embraced and cherished and part of a whole. And do we hear constantly the repercussions of people's perceived and or lived experiences with the way that society has really scaled back on the rights of, I mean, most all, but LGBTQ identified folk? Yes, yes. We more recently were actually supporting a member whose grandparent kept on telling them, you can't leave the house, you can't leave the house, you can't leave the house. The young person finally was like, listen, I have to leave the house. Is, like, one, I go to school. Two, it's my life. It's okay. I'm going to be safe. And what they asked of us was that we speak to their grandparent. And we did. We jumped on the phone with them and we were like, hey, let's talk through some of the worries that you have. Also, let's talk about the practicality of these worries, right? Like, are there, especially now in a age of digital immediateness where we see everything live all the time, like everything is just a live landscape at all times. It feels like it's more prevalent, more ready, more out there, but the reality is that it's not as prevalent and as ready as it has ever been. In fact, the incidences of hate, because I'm going to call it what it is, um, and even conservative movement, it's much slower than it has ever been, right? Even if we look at the language that conservatives are using, it does mirror language that we are using to identify ourselves. However, they're being much stronger with where their limitations and boundaries are, right? And because we're seeing everything in an immediate, insta moment, it feels like everything happens right now, right fast, right big, right quickly. And so it's scary, right? And so what we're doing, I think, is a lot of managing that perceived, oh my God, it's all coming down. When in reality, it's not coming down as quickly as we think it is. It's just that we're seeing it, hearing it, and feeling like it's being enacted so much quicker. And so part of that work, I think it goes back to that emotional and mental support that we offer people in our space. It's around really reminding them that a lot of it is that we're seeing it as quickly as we're seeing it. And that the one-off really terrible events are what we are capturing much quicker than all the other supportive spaces in which we're moving, right? Like, I even go to the fact that, oh my God, now they're not allowing gay people to buy things. No, that's not true. Haters are going to hate, and that's always been the case. I think people just feel like they are able to verbalize it more. However, the opposite of that is that we have way more queer and out people that are vendors and showcasing their crafts and their art and their food and their all these things. And so what this means is that we just have to flip our concept and start supporting our community way more and more intentionally than we have in the past. So is there going to be one person who doesn't want to make a cake for us? Sure. But now there's also 15 queer vendors that we can go get cake from that we don't have to worry about.
That's a very reassuring perspective that I'm sure people around you benefit from hearing because it definitely reassured me too, just listening to it. I was like, wow, that's something I think a lot of people need to hear.
Thank you. Yeah, I
Sure.
think of it like that all the time. Like I was like, okay, so like literally in this case, I was like, one person doesn't want to bake a cake for me. Yeah, okay. And here are like 15 other queer bakers that I know, including like having the big gay ice cream right down the street from me. Don't worry, lady. I don't need you to take my money. My gay money can go to gay vendors. We're good. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? Like, it's fine.
that's true. And now I'm gonna give you some room just to share about absolutely anything and everything you would like to. So not question centered, but whatever comes to mind.
Yeah, I think that I appreciate you even acknowledging that last statement. I do feel that we have to have more opportunities to really flip the script, right? I think that we don't get that often enough. I think that we don't get to do that professionally. We certainly don't get to do that socially. Again, like I said, in that instant moment, we're hearing all the negative, and that's what's being uplifted. And I think that we really have to find ways to be able to uplift the positives, but also showcase where the services are happening, and be able to tell the stories, right? The real stories, and then also how those stories are impacting people. So there's a lot of that. I think in terms of leadership, if I go to that, far in between are there BIPOC, queer people of color that are leading spaces, but we're out there. And I know that the more that people are willing to listen and to uplift us as directors and or as leaders, the more we can recognize that, man, there's a lot of possibility models out there. And like that's really great to be able to see and hold on to and tack on to. Um, and I think that the last thing for me is that um, what an amazing opportunity that I get to, work in a space where nonprofit issues or nonprofit issues. I mean, I think that we can just, all dive in and say, oh my God, that's what happens. But like, I'm excited to come in. I'm excited to work with other queer people. I'm excited to work in a space that was intentionally built to be the way it is. And to know that whatever feels a little gray is going to be, another rainbow shortly thereafter, right? Because I do get to see many of those success stories that we don't often captivate. And that also success looks very different um, for us in a way that doesn't seem so straight and narrow and boxed, like all the heteronormative ways that really, celebrate milestones. Milestones for us are when people have, for the first time ever, felt like they've slept in a space that feels safe to them. Milestones are an opportunity to hear a young person say that they are questioning their identity and that in a space like this, they can come in and try it all. Right? Milestone to me is being able to say that there's a person who was told for as long as they can remember that they wouldn't graduate high school, but they met people here who, in every facet of the way that they show up, is accepting them and they're getting their GED, and we will also give them a graduation. Right? Like, milestone to me is knowing that I have a full group of 12 TGNC identified folk who are learning that there is a space in the executive world for them and a corporate world for them that may not look like what we see on TV, but certainly looks like more than they've ever been told they can have. Right? Like those are the pieces that make all this work feel really, really powerful. And knowing that it isn't just for the sake of meeting the next goal, but really acknowledging people in their truth feels really, really great.
Thank you for sharing very important notes as to what people can look for to uplift them and people who look like them. Something that we do over here at Organ Donation Awareness Corporation is advocate for communities who do differ from HMI's community, but at the end of the day, it's about supporting their livelihood. We encourage New York youth to register as organ donors after
I'm
learning
an
what
organ donor. Yeah,
we love to hear it, yes, especially because it is one of the choices a person can make that's almost minimal effort, but largest impact, and so
agreed. 100%.
Love to hear it. And so for this last question, pertaining to both of the missions and supporting a very wide variety of people, what do you say is the most effective way of promoting your advocacy and joining others who maybe have never heard of it to support your journey?
Yeah, I think that, um, my gosh, really ensuring that even the story that you're telling can connect back to the beliefs of people, right? Like, how do we even, like when you even look at presidential campaigns, look at anyone who's running for any role, right? Like the way that they buy into people is by marrying their personal story to that of the people and what people have experienced, right? So, like, even when we're talking about organ donation, it's really looking at the critical and vitalness, right, that organs have provided the person who has lived their journey and may no longer be with us, but also the impact that that's going to have in the livelihood of the next person and what that means, right? And while, for us in having to advocate who we are as people and people understanding our journey and people really recognizing that what may not be the quote unquote norm, right? And I think that you can all align with that, that what may not be the norm of utilizing a vital organ in another person's body is also part of a journey that is never ending, right? Think about what the opportunities are to allow people to live whole, complete lives just by the gift that you're providing, right? And that, sure, it may not be what you're used to culturally, queerness. It may not be used to what you're used to culturally, but the impact that people get once they're allowed to show up as their whole self, and even what that means for society and what that means for like just the greater possibility of allowing folk to show up as they are, or allowing to have life sustaining opportunities for folk to be who they are, really makes a difference. Just for livelihood, for opportunity, for possibility, and even for holding a special sense of what you've provided to that next person. So I think the most important part for me is just aligning your story with what impacts others, right? Like, and people having understanding of the purpose. When people can line up to purpose, they feel like they've contributed to that, right?
Yes. Thank you so much for this conversation.